Okay. Whoop. Okay, today I am going to talk about the Challenger disaster. Where were you on January 28th, 1986? Some of you were born, some of you were not. Some of you might have been in school, some of you might have been at work. What happened on this day was 7 astronauts lost their lives on live television in the Challenger disaster. Today I'm going to discuss events leading up to the launch, the actual liftoff, and then the aftermath, what happened after the explosion. So, on January 28th, 1986, at 11:30 or 10 Eastern Time, Central Time was 10:30, I was actually in a classroom. I was in the 8th grade, and I was going into class, and it had just happened, and our teacher, we were going to watch it on television that day, and our teacher, had the news on, and talked about how what happened that day. We were going to talk about the teacher going into space, because there was supposed to be the first civilian in space. There was going to be a teacher. So we talked about that day, so that's why I remember it. And then, of course, I've done research on it the last few weeks to be able to come and talk to y'all about it. This is a picture of the 7 astronauts. The one on the left here, the first one, is actually Krista McCullough, who was the teacher, supposed to be the first teacher in space. So let's begin before the launch. President Reagan actually announced the Teacher in Flight program several years before the launch, actually happened. There were 11,000 candidates, and of those 11,000 candidates for the first teacher in space, Krista McCullough, won. Her backup was supposed to be Barbara Morgan. She was there at Kennedy Space Center watching the launch. There were 9 successful missions prior to that January 28, 1986. This was supposed to be the 10th of the Challenger. The Challenger had, successfully lifted off and came back and had successful missions 9 times before this. The 9th one ended on 11/6 of '85, leaving only 10 weeks to prepare the Challenger again for this 10th mission. Seems a little short to me, 10 weeks to prepare a shuttle to go back up, but that's what they had. According to Joe Garner, in We Interrupt This Broadcast, he wrote a book on several different disasters that's happened over the last 50 years. He says that there were 4 postponements. 2 of them were rescheduled prior to prior missions. Prior missions were rescheduled for different reasons, which bumped this one back as well. And then 1 was for bad weather, ironically, and 1 was for a faulty hatch. The night before the launch, NASA and Morton Thiokol, which was the manufacturer of the solid rocket motors, they had a teleconference. And there were several engineers in this meeting that felt that the shuttle was not safe to lift off in such cold temperatures. The forecast was supposed to be 31 degrees for the next morning. That was pretty cold for Florida temperatures, as you know. Yeah. And it was, unseasonably cool for this time of, it was January, but it's unseasonably cool for Florida. So there were several in the meeting that, questioned whether the O-rings could stand up or not. They had several tests, on prior missions, testing the O-rings in the colder temperatures, and they had not stood up very well under colder temperatures. But however, in the end, it was Morton Thiel that recommended that the launch proceed. And this was the engineering company. So now we'll move on to the actual launch. At 11:38 Eastern Daylight Time on January 28th, 1986, we have liftoff. And I want to show you the short little film, live coverage on CNN that showed the launch that day.
Started. T-minus 21 seconds, and the solid rocket booster engine gimbal now underway. T-minus 15 seconds. Nine, 8, 7, 6. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Good roll program confirmed. Challenger now heading downrange. Engines beginning throttling down now at 94%. Normal throttles for most of the plane, 104%. We'll throttle down to 65% shortly. Engines at 65%, 3 engines running normally, 3 good fuel cells, 3 good APUs. Velocity 2,257 feet per second. Altitude 4.3 nautical miles, downrange distance 3 nautical miles.
So the 25th Space Shuttle mission is now on the way after 4 delays in NASA cares to count. This morning it looked as though they were not going to be able to get off.
15 seconds, velocity 2,900 feet per second, altitude 9 nautical miles, downrange distance 7 nautical miles.
That's pretty much it. They talk about it being a major malfunction, as he puts it. I would say that. There are incidences recorded of a puff of black smoke coming from the rocket booster just after liftoff. Later on, they decide, that they use that as investigation for that the O-rings did fail. So 73 seconds after liftoff, we have disaster. Now we're moving on to the aftermath. What happened afterward? Astronauts' remains, they did find the shuttle in the bottom of the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. They found some of their remains, and what they could identify, they sent back to the families of the astronauts. What they could not identify is buried at Arlington Cemetery. And I thought these pictures were good. I wanted to show you. They wouldn't let me save them, I guess, because of the website. But that's the monument that's there at Arlington Cemetery. It's got their pictures on it. The Challenger's remains are buried in a Minuteman silo at Cape Canaveral Air Station. Not much more to be said about that. They buried them away so they didn't have to look at them. This was obviously after their examination of them and determining the O-rings were the failure. It took 32 months for another shuttle to launch. So it took them almost 3 years to actually get another shuttle up in the air. It took 22 years for another civilian to be allowed in space. And I thought it was ironic that Barbara Morgan, the backup to Krista McAuliffe, was the one that went up in the Endeavour in 2007. She was the first civilian to go up. So, in conclusion, I just wanted to say that I've discussed the events leading up to, through, and after the explosion of the Space Shuttle Challenger. However, I've only given you a few facts that I found. If you want to learn more, there's actually a movie coming out on in the Science Channel and Discovery Channel are going to air it simulcast on November the 16th. So tune in if you want to hear more. Thank you.
How many minutes?
I was more than 6, wasn't it? It's okay.